that, my friends, is how we managed to beat Goblin Charbelcher. Can you believe it? Hello and welcome, everybody. We are here for match 2 with the beautiful Karn the Great Creator list that you see on screen right here in front of you. I do have some quick unfortunate news, which is that the original audio for this match was corrupted. It was lost, so I'll have to do a replay. Hopefully you can bear with me on that. And yeah, I have nothing else really to say in the intro other than if you are not familiar with this deck list and want to know how we arrived at this particular choice of cards, then check out match 1 of this league, and I will not be going into that detail here. So, I will see you guys for the games. Alright, here we are for game 1 against our opponent. I do not know how to pronounce this. Pikio36, perhaps? Anyways, we are on the draw, sadly. And our opponent is playing first, of course. Our opponent begins the game with their 7 cards in hand, and we are greeted with the following hand of all lands and an Explorer. And we can't even cast that Explorer on turn 2. This is a snap mulligan, obviously. And then we are greeted with a hand that contains Ancient Stirrings, Lance to cast Titan, a Tolari West to transmute for Titan, and a Karn. I mean, if we top deck any Amulet, or an Explorer, or a Grazer, or something along those lines, we get a turn 3 Karn, which could be good enough, and so we're going to give this a shot. And we do choose to bottom the basic forest here, as our breeding pool will allow us to activate Garenbrig, and our garrison might be instrumental in being able to cast our Karn on turn 3, especially if we find an Amulet. Tolari West giving us access to Titan here, so the forest is the one to bite the bullet here. And our opponent leads on tapped Bolligid Sanctuary, pass. So this is one of 2 decks. It's either Oops All Spells or Charbelcher, and of course, you know by the title of this video that it's Charbelcher, but even at this moment, I figured that it was Charbelcher, as Charbelcher is more likely to play the into the battlefield tapped green and red lands, whereas Oops All Spells basically just wants all their lands to enter untapped, if at all possible. So leading on a Bolligid Sanctuary indicates that it's probably Charbelcher, but of course there's no way to know for sure. Here we're going to go ahead and play out our breeding pool and cast Stirrings, looking for that Amulet, but unfortunately we find a Karn instead, and bottom 2 Primeval Titans. Very interesting. Yeah, we just pass it back. Our opponent shocks in Shatterskull, goes for the double Seeming Spirit Guide, exile, and just casts Charbelcher. And yeah, we're basically just dead. We do have a slight chance that they don't have another way to produce another mana, like a ritual or another into the battlefield untapped land. So we are going to go ahead and play a land and pass here, but that's all formality, of course, as our opponent just immediately slams the untapped land into play, activates Charbelcher, and we find ourselves to be very dead. And they do reveal here, of note, a couple Blood Moons, 3 Blood Moons to be precise, in the main deck here, and a couple of Pact Negations, which we expect that they'll probably side out. Those are the only relevant cards here, as we are geared up to go to game 2 here against our Charbelcher opponent. So I will see you guys very shortly for the sideboarding. Alright guys, so we are here to discuss the sideboarding for this particular match, and this is where we start for this upcoming game 2. We bring in these 4 cards, the Ghost Quarter, the Wilt, the Reclamation Sage, and the Force, and we side out all 4 Explorers, as this is a matchup that is way too fast for Explorer. And the idea behind these cards, other than the Ghost Quarter, is to try to snipe out a Charbelcher before our opponent is able to activate it. So for example, if they play Charbelcher and pass, playing to untap and activate it the turn after, Rex Sage, Force, and Wilt can all come into play in order to stop our opponent from doing what they need to do. I suppose also with Force in particular, if our opponent were to play Charbelcher and then play a Ritual, planning to activate Charbelcher after the Ritual resolves, we might be able to get them that way with Force, but primarily that's what these 3 are here for. And then, of course, we have Ghost Quarter because our opponent is clearly playing 0 lands in their deck. I know sometimes it has been popular for our opponent's deck to play 1 basic land in the sideboard, to play around things like Ghost Quarter and Cleansing Wildfire, but we don't really anticipate that here, so Ghost Quarter is actually just going to give us an extra turn against them, quite possibly, and of course we're siding Explorer because they're very slow. And that's all we have for the sideboarding. I will see you guys in game 2 very shortly. Alright, so we're here for game 2 on the play, and of course we do choose to be on the play. And we see a hand that has a bunch of lands, Titan mana to be precise, but no early plays, no ramp. We'd like to see a Karn or some kind of interaction for artifacts in general, although we do have Summoner's Pact, but we don't want to be packing for a Rex Sage. That's just not where we want to be, so we're going to mulligan this, obviously. And we are greeted with a hand that is similarly slow. This is a turn 4 Karn kind of hand. We don't even have a bounce land, so if we were to top deck an Amulet, we can't really make good use of it. Turn 3 Dryad is not beating our opponent's turn 3 Kill You deck, so we're just going to go ahead and ship this one back as well. As our opponent, I believe, has kept 7. Yep. And we're on 5 here, and we see the following 5 cards. We see Dryad, Rexage, Karn, and a couple of lands. But of note, we do have a couple untapped sources, including a Crumbling Vestige here. So we basically have no choice but to keep this hand, hoping that we can Rexage a artifact from our opponent, their Charbelcher, and then slam Karn so they can't possibly win. Karn also allowing us to beat Blood Moon potentially as well, so we are going to keep this. We're going to bottom the Dryad and one of the lands here, as this will allow us to turn 3 a Rexage, and if we top deck any land, turn 4 a Karn. Or even if we top deck a Amulet, we can play turn 1 tap land, turn 2 Amulet, tap land, turn 3 Karn off of Crumbling. So there's some idea to this hand. And we're going to go ahead and play Valakut and pass it back. If we do top deck a Grazer, then I suppose it would have been better to leave on Garen Vega, but of course we could play Grazer off of this Vestige anyways. We find ourselves top decking Primeval Titan, so of course we're just going to play our tap land here and pass it back. Our opponent uses Simeon Spirit Guide and casts Ritual, and they play Blood Moon, yikes, and land, super yikes. So we're just going to draw a dead card here, of course, and play our land and pass it back, hoping that our opponent doesn't just belch us. And they play a Ritual and hardcast Charbelcher, and luckily for us, we do top deck the land, so we can turn off our opponent's Charbelcher by playing Karn the Great Creator here. And we don't really want to lose this one to a Lightning Bolt or anything like that, especially since it's currently stopping us from dying to this Charbelcher, so we're just going to plus it here and pass it back. Our opponent plays land and passes. We draw another blank, and so we're just going to use the Karn here to get Liquid Metal Coating. We're going to play that one. And on our opponent's upkeep, we're going to deny them a mana and continue to eat away a land every turn as we plus our Karn to eventually get a threat like Wormcoil Engine into play. We pass it back. Our opponent just casts a Manamorphose here to draw the card. They play a Ritual. I'm not sure for what reason. Just kidding. Our opponent takes some time to do this, but they do cast a Shatter Skull Smashing to deal 1 damage to our Karn. It's my personal opinion that they should have held on to this and waited for several copies of Rituals and whatnot to try to get the max value out of their smashing and try to just kill Karn, but, I mean, here this 1 damage to Karn is not doing anything, so of course we don't care about this. We're just going to untap here, coding away one of their lands, and plus it, of course, and pass it back. Nothing too crazy here. Our opponent is going to pass. And we're going to go to our turn, coding a land, plus it, pass, as we're still drawing blanks here. Plays land and passes it back. We top deck an Amulet. We go ahead and go ham on another land and pass it back. And our opponent scoops it up, knowing that they can't beat the Karn lock that we have in place here. And that is it for Game 2. I will see you guys for Game 3. Alright guys, so we are here for Game 3 against our Charbelcher opponent, and of course there's no sideboarding changes. There's nothing that's changed here. We just need to answer our opponent's Blood Moons and or Charbelchers, and that's our only hope here. So our opponent's on the play, which is fantastic for them, not really that great for us. And we have a hand here that cannot even cast a turn 1 Grazer. We have an answer to Charbelcher technically, but again, like I said, packing for a Rexage is not really the best. And we'd rather just be slamming an early Karn here, so of course we're going to mulligan this for something a little faster. We find the following hand with a bunch of lands, Dryad, and Summoner's Pact. Again, we're not doing anything fast this hand, and our opponent's going to kill us as fast as possible, so we have no choice but to mulligan this as well. And we find the following hand. It has Titan mana, it has a Tolari West to transmute for a Titan. We get to play a turn 1 Grazer, turn 2 Dryad, so if we top deck a Karn, we should be able to go ham with Karn. And I think that we basically are forced to keep this hand. So we bottom 2 cards here, keeping our transmuting mana, our untapped source for turn 1 Grazer, and a bounce land to play Dryad on turn 2 here, of course. And we'll see what we can do this game. Our opponent leads on a tap land and passes. We top deck a Wilt, which is a particularly fantastic one if our opponent decides to commit a Charbelcher without being able to activate it, we can just get them with Wilt, and maybe that should be good enough. We play our turn 1 Grazer here, putting in our Growth Chamber, of course, picking up our land and passing it back to our opponent. They play an untapped land, Desperate Ritual, exile a Simian Spirit Guide, cast Charbelcher, and pass the turn. And you all know already at this point what it is that we are doing here. We are going to cast Wilt. Of course, we can't cast Dryad first, as we would be 1 mana short of actually casting Wilt, so we're just going to go ahead and slam this Wilt, and play our tap land and pass it back. Attacking with the Grazer for absolute maximum value, of course. Our opponent has this tap land in the pass, and we are slamming our Amulet, playing our Dryad, hoping to top deck a Titan this upcoming turn, playing out all of our hand here, swinging with Grazer again, because why would you not? And our opponent goes for the Force of Vigor, exiling a Metamorphose from their hand to kill our Dryad and Amulet. But to be honest, the damage has already been done to our opponent here. They are very strapped on ways to win the game here. We top deck a Stirrings, find a bounce land. That one's fine because this will allow us to maintain Titan mana while being able to transmute for a Summoner's Pact. So, of course, we pick up the Tolari West and transmute it for that Summoner's Pact. Swing with our Grazer again, just because what else are we doing in this game? Play an Amulet that we freshly drew off the top, which basically ends the game on the spot, as now we can pack for a Titan, cast said Titan with Garenbrig, and still be able to haste and attack with the Titan. So here we're going to search for Garrison and Stronghold, of course. Untap both, haste our Titan here, pick up the Boros Garrison, and swing. And here, our only considerations are to play around Blood Moon, as we do have to pay for a Summoner's Pact. We also would like to try to stop our opponent from having anything to do this upcoming turn. So, of course, the cards that we're talking about here are Basic Forest and Ghost Quarter. Untapping both, of course. The Basic Forest letting us play around potential Blood Moon, and Ghost Quarter letting us cut our opponent off of 1 mana, in the case that it's relevant. We're going to go ahead and play our Garrison, as we do have a land for turn, pick up the Garenbrig, and on our opponent's draw step, in case they did bring in that basic land and they happen to draw it for turn, we are going to fire off this Ghost Quarter, depriving them of a mana here, and they go ahead and scoop it up as they are dead. D-E-D, dead. And that, my friends, is how we managed to beat a opponent playing Goblin Charbelcher. Can you believe it? I couldn't. I was on top of the world after this match, and even thinking back on it now, I'm very excited. And of course, it was all made possible thanks to this beautiful gentleman right here, Karn the Great Creator, allowing us to cut off our opponent's Charbelcher and coating away all of their lands and slowly climb our way towards a Wormcoil Engine. That was fantastic. The Wilt looking super amazing there as well. And yeah, that's all I have for this match. Hopefully you don't mind the format, and I have nothing else to say. This is Red Face Menace, signing off.